So would you mind getting up, just prompting
Yeah.
GPT, open up a new chat?
Yeah.
So I do a Bible study every day, and I've just fallen in love with the etymology of words, and particularly in the New Testament, looking at the Greek. Greek is so what's cool about the Bible is Hebrew is a right-brained, much more intuitive language.
Yeah.
Greek is a left-brained, much more analytical and logical language. And so the languages themselves almost form the two halves of the cognitive structure in the two brain
That's cool.
hemispheres, which is beautiful to think that these two books are God's word.
Yeah.
There's something to that. So there is, I think it's Acts 3. Well, let's just do this.
Yeah.
Where in the book of Acts does the word archegos show up?
Archegos?
Yep. I think it's Acts 3 and Acts 5, and then I think it's in Hebrews 2, Hebrews 12, but I'm not exactly sure. Acts 3, I think it's also Acts 5. Yeah.
There you go.
So then, let's say, give me the translations of the two Acts quotes in the ESV translation, the NIV, the KJV, and NASB.
NASB. Let's see if it does it.
So what it should do is it should give us different translations.
Okay, let's see. So give us some context here while it's writing this out. So, let's start with Acts 3:15.
Okay, so the book of Acts so you have the four Gospels, and the Gospels are written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yeah.
And Luke wrote 2 letters, and they were letters to a guy named Theophilus.
Yeah.
And the first letter is the book of Luke, and then the second letter is the book of Acts. And Acts is about the story of the early church. It's basically a history book. And Luke is particularly interesting because he was a physician, and physicians then, as with now, they're very precise about their details. So what we're getting here is through Luke in the book of Acts, we are seeing the different ways that Luke's Greek writing is translated into English. So the ESV and the NIV are more modern, slightly more accessible versions. Now, they're not as accessible as something like the Message, which really twists the word so that it can be easily understood. Actually, not necessarily in a negative way, so long as you know what is happening. Whereas the NASB is the one that I really like to read, and it's the most faithful to the original text.
So it seems like it can't find the NASB, so maybe we should just find it ourselves.
Cool.
But let's see. Yeah.
Well, actually, we can just look at this right here.
Okay, cool. So this doesn't give the specific translations except for the first one.
So why don't we just say, show me how the Acts 3:15 is translated in the English Standard Version, the New International Version, and the King James Version.
Great.
So what we're going to see is the English Standard Version and the New International Version is going to use the word author. And the King James Version is going to use the word prince. Okay?
Interesting.
So what I do when I read is I try to look for discrepancies. What are the discrepancies and what do they reveal?
Here we go. You killed the author of life, whom God raised from the dead. You killed the author of life, but God raised him from the dead. And you killed the prince of life, whom God hath raised from the dead, whereof we are witnesses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Author, prince.
Yeah.
How could author and prince be the same word? An author is someone who sits in a room and writes.
Yeah.
A prince is somebody who leads.
Yeah.
So now we ask, okay, what's going on there? What is the original Greek word for the word author and prince? And it's going to give us the word archegos.
Nice.
Okay, so now we have an insight.
Yeah.
Okay, the word archegos means author, leader, prince, or pioneer. Those are totally separate things in English.
Yeah.
They're totally the same thing in Greek.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we are seeing something through the Greek
Yeah.
that the English doesn't reveal. That Jesus is the author, leader, prince, and pioneer. He is the writer. Type in John 1:1. And what is he there? He is, the text is going to say, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So Jesus is the Word. And he is like this author of life. There we go. Then, from that, he becomes a leader of this new movement. And he's almost this like prince, right? He, like, Jesus reigns. He's the king. He's the prince.
Yeah.
And he's this pioneer of a whole new way of living.
Yeah.
So then you're like, okay, we can ask, what are some examples of an archegos in the modern world?
That's really interesting.
And I think you have a few examples. You have someone like Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos is an author. He's effectively a prince. He's definitely a leader, and he's wholeheartedly a pioneer.
There you go. It went right for Elon Musk and Steve Jobs.
Okay. Now, apply this to ask it about the American founding fathers. Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson. This is what they did. You don't just think of them as these people who were founding America.
Yeah.
What did they do? They wrote the Federalist Papers. They wrote the Constitution.
Yeah.
They were these authors. So you start with being the author.
Yeah.
Then you go into being the founder from being the Satoshi, right?
Yeah.
He is the author. Then he founds the thing, pioneers the new thing, becomes the prince. And you see the same thing with George Washington and
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson, right? So type that in. And now what you can basically see is, for me in my work running Read a Passage, I can now make an argument for writing that is rooted in this Greek word, that the Greek has revealed to me that all these things that I thought were totally different are actually one and the same.
Yeah.
And that then is why you should write. And I can only get there by following the etymology of these words. And GPT is really useful because I can see the different translations, look at the discrepancies, and get my answer.
That's really beautiful. I think in particular why it resonates with me is there's always this tension between being a writer and doing things in the world.
Exactly.
And I think one of the reasons why it was hard for me to admit that I wanted to be a writer is because there is this part of me that like wants to run businesses and wants to do things. And like I have all these ideas and I want to like make an impact in the world. And it was hard to reconcile that with the writer part of me. And also I think there's a lot of social pressure to like not follow the writer thing and do this other thing in the world. And this is like a really beautiful embodiment of the path from writing to like changing the world.
It's not the path. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. What you were seeing as two separate things, the Greek is showing you that they're linked together, that through authorship, you then get world change.
Yeah.
And if that is your tack, you now, through this Greek word of archegos, you have a pin that synthesizes all of these seemingly conflicting desires and is showing you